Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered why working with others sometimes makes us smarter and other times not so much? This fascinating study dives deep into that very question, exploring the magic behind group intelligence. So, we all know that sometimes groups can be amazing. Think about brainstorming sessions or even just asking a few friends for advice. Often, a group's answer is better than any single person's. This idea is called collective intelligence. But why does this happen? For a long time, scientists thought it was mainly because groups just have more information, more brains, raw knowledge, right? This is like the wisdom of the crowd idea. If you get a bunch of independent guesses, even if some are wrong, the average guess can be surprisingly accurate. It's like individual errors cancel each other out. But this research asks a really important question. Is it just about having more information, or does the actual talking and interacting between people also make a big difference? The researchers here, Belgin, Ünal, and Aaron S. Benjamin, designed a series of clever experiments to find out. They wanted to see if groups that actually talk to each other actually perform better than virtual groups made up of people who answered separately, and then their answers were just combined mathematically. In their first experiment, they had people answer general knowledge questions. Some people did it alone, and others worked in pairs. The pairs actually talked to each other and came up with one joint answer. Then, they compared how accurate the lonely individual answers were versus the answers from the talking pairs. They also created these nominal groups. Imagine you have a bunch of people who answered questions alone. A nominal group is like a made-up group, where you take some of those individual answers and combine them using different rules. For example, one rule might be to just pick one person's answer randomly. Another rule might be to average their answers. A more sophisticated rule might be to pick the answer from the person who felt most confident. This is where it gets really interesting. They created these simulated groups based on how confident people were in their answers. Confidence is a big deal because usually we trust people who sound sure of themselves. So they tested if simply picking the most confident person's answer or using a confidence-weighted average could explain why groups are smarter. Now for the big reveal, in experiment 1, the groups that actually talked and collaborated were significantly more accurate than individuals. But here is the kicker. They also outperformed all of the simulated nominal groups. This included the ones that use confidence to make decisions. Think about it. They had ways to simulate a group's performance based on individual answers and confidence levels. Even these simulated smart groups based on aggregation rules weren't as good as the real groups who actually talked it out. They also measured something called metacognitive efficiency. This is basically how well a group uses the knowledge and certainty it has available to get the right answer. Interacting groups were much more efficient than the simulated groups. This means they weren't just pooling information or trusting the most confident person they were doing something more. To make sure this wasn't a fluke, they did experiment 2 with a slightly different design. This time, the same people first answered questions alone, and then they got together in pairs to answer the same questions again. This is a super strong design because it compares each pair's actual talking performance to a simulated group made from their very own individual answers. And guess what? The results were the same. The pairs who talked and collaborated were way more accurate than what you'd expect from just combining their individual answers, even considering their confidence. This is where the research really shines. They're showing that the act of interacting, of discussing and debating, is where the real boost in collective intelligence comes from. It is not just about the information you start with, it is about the cognitive gymnastics you do together. They even tested this with a different type of question in experiment 3 multiple choice, where you have to pick between 2 options. Again, the talking groups did better than the simulated groups, and they were also better at calibrating their confidence. What is calibration? It is about how well your feeling of confidence matches your actual accuracy. If you are super confident, you should usually be right. If you are not sure, you should be less accurate. The talking groups were better at this. Their confidence wasn't just a wild guess, it was more aligned with how right they actually were. So, what is going on during this interaction that makes it so powerful? The researchers suggest a few things. When you explain your ideas to someone else, you have to really think them through. You might spot your own mistakes or realize you're missing something. Discussion allows people to share different pieces of knowledge that no single person might have. It's like putting together a puzzle where each person has a few unique pieces. The interaction also helps people figure out how reliable each other's confidence is. You can tell if someone is just bluffing or if they genuinely know what they're talking about. And believe it or not, talking groups can even change their strategy on the fly depending on the question. For some questions, it might be best to listen to the most confident person. For others, it might be better to pool everyone's ideas. Interaction lets them adapt. Now, it is important to remember that this research was done with college students in short, face-to-face interactions. This means we can't automatically say the same thing will happen with, say, a long-term work team, or if everyone is communicating only through text messages online. The fact that they were face-to-face is probably a big factor. You get body language, tone of voice, and all sorts of subtle cues that help you gauge credibility. We don't know if these same benefits would pop up in a Zoom call or an email chain. Plus, these were strangers, so they didn't have pre-existing trust or established roles, which could also change things. But the main takeaway is huge. The power of working together isn't just about having more information, it is about the actual process of interaction itself. When we reason together, we engage in deeper thinking, we can correct our own and others' errors, and we become better at judging how confident we should be. This is incredibly important for everything from how we learn in classrooms to how companies make big decisions. If we understand how interaction helps, we can design better teams and better ways of working together to make smarter choices. It is about more than just the sum of our individual knowledge. It is about the emergent intelligence that happens when we truly collaborate. What do you think about this research? Does it surprise you that talking can be so much more powerful than just combining answers? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into collective intelligence, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained simply. We'll see you next time.